Every day, we see the darker side of the world around us. We witness how people can hurt others in ways that are hard to understand. It's a sad part of life, but it's something we can't ignore. As someone who dives into the world of crime, I'm here to share the most shocking stories and try to understand what drives people to do such things. I'm Michael, and today, I've got another unreal true crime story for you. It was a quiet night, almost too quiet. The streets were empty, the soft glow of streetlights casting long shadows. Inside their beautiful home, Joe and Olga Connell were winding down from the day, unaware that danger was just outside. Then everything changed. A sudden noise, a struggle, fear filled the air. By the time anyone realized something was wrong, it was already too late. At first, it seemed like a simple break-in, a robbery gone wrong. But as detectives started digging, they uncovered something far more disturbing. This wasn't random. Someone had been planning this for a long time. Who would want Joe and Olga dead? And why? The truth would shock everyone who thought they knew them. Joseph came from a well-off and tightly knit family. As the middle child, he had an older brother, John, and a younger sister, Kelly. Like most siblings, their early years were filled with playful squabbles, but everything changed when their parents divorced. Instead of growing apart, the three became inseparable, forming an unbreakable bond. They stayed with their mother after the split, and over time, she found love again. Her new husband turned out to be a wonderful stepfather, seamlessly stepping into the role of a supportive and caring parent. The family lived in a peaceful and welcoming neighborhood. Their days were busy with work and school, but evenings were sacred. They gathered around the dining table, sharing stories and discussing their day. Joseph, or Joe as everyone called him, was a determined and disciplined young man, especially when it came to his studies and work. However, he also had a fun-loving side, making him the life of any gathering. From an early age, he dreamed of owning his own business and making a name for himself. Thanks to his sharp instincts and relentless drive, he turned his ambitions into reality. Alongside his best friend, Christopher Rivers, Joe opened a machine shop and a specialized store in Tullyville. Their story was one of perseverance and hard work. Two young men building a successful enterprise from the ground up. The community recognized them as talented entrepreneurs who shared a deep passion for their business and a strong friendship. Joe had always embraced bachelorhood, never rushing into relationships. That changed when he met Olga, a striking Russian woman. Their paths crossed on a dating website, where their conversations quickly revealed a shared outlook on life. Both were mature individuals with plenty of life experience, making their connection easy and natural. Olga confided that she was in the middle of a divorce and had recently relocated to the United States. Joe, in turn, shared his past relationships and aspirations for the future. Their chemistry was undeniable, and before long, their bond grew deeper. Realizing he couldn't imagine life without her, Joe proposed. Olga happily accepted. There was just one small complication. She had yet to meet Joe's family, but he had no doubts about their acceptance. When they finally met her, they were captivated by her beauty and charm. Even the most skeptical relatives were won over, astonished that someone had managed to break through Joe's independent nature. Their relationship progressed rapidly. Joe was proud to show Olga off, taking her everywhere and openly expressing his love. However, behind her gentle demeanor was a fiery Siberian spirit. Her boundless energy and strong will surprised everyone. She was fearless and resourceful, seemingly capable of tackling any challenge. Joe, utterly enamored, wasted no time in planning their wedding, as if he sensed an urgency neither of them understood at the time. Some people, they say, are always in a hurry to live. The investigation began with a flood of questions. After the attack, authorities scrambled to piece together what had happened. Witnesses, neighbors, and passers-by were questioned, but no one had seen the actual shooting. Many, however, reported hearing gunshots and fleeing in fear. Some recalled hearing loud male voices engaged in an argument just before the attack. Not far from the crime scene, forensic experts discovered numerous shell casings from two distinct firearms, confirming that multiple assailants had been involved. The volume of shots fired suggested a deliberate and ruthless execution. Survival in such a brutal assault was almost impossible. It became clear that the attackers had been waiting for Joe and Olga to return home. The couple had spent the evening at a popular bar, celebrating a birthday with friends and Joe's family. They enjoyed the night, laughing and dancing until midnight, before deciding to call it a night. As they parked near their home and made their way to the entrance, their attackers seized the perfect moment to strike. The next step in the investigation was interviewing the victims' families. Officers sat down with Joe's mother and stepfather, hoping for clues. Did the couple have enemies? Were there any threats or unresolved disputes? The parents were at a loss. By all accounts, Joe and Olga had no known enemies. Still, as the officers knew, success and happiness often attract envy. Even if the couple never spoke of conflicts, that didn't mean none existed. As detectives delved deeper into the case, an intriguing revelation emerged. Joe and his sister Kelly had a falling out on the night before his wedding, and the argument revolved around a valuable family heirloom, an ornate diamond ring estimated to be worth $20,000. Their disagreement created a noticeable rift between them, though relatives insisted that Kelly would never resort to violence. Adding to the mystery, the ring remained on Olga's finger after the attack, leaving detectives to wonder whether the dispute had truly ended. Coincidentally, Kelly was among the first to arrive at the crime scene that fateful night. Given that she lived in a different neighborhood, her presence so close to the incident raised eyebrows. Investigators couldn't ignore the possibility that unresolved resentment played a role in what had transpired. But how had the family ring ended in Olga's hand? Joe and Olga had chosen the Virgin Islands as the destination for their wedding. The only complication in the preparations was the engagement ring. According to family tradition, the heirloom ring was meant to be passed from mother to son before the wedding. However, 10 years prior, it had already been gifted to Kelly for her own marriage. Determined to uphold tradition without confrontation, Joe secretly retrieved the ring from his sister, replacing its diamonds with zirconium before discreetly returning it. The real diamonds were then set into Olga's engagement ring. It was a calculated move meant to preserve custom while avoiding family drama. However, his plan backfired. Kelly eventually noticed the switch and was furious. When she confronted Joe, he dismissed her concerns, believing she was needlessly trying to disrupt the wedding. Hurt and outraged, Kelly refused to attend the ceremony, citing work obligations. However, she did not remain silent. As an act of defiance, she sent Olga a cryptic, sarcastic message that exposed the truth about the ring. This revelation marked the beginning of a deep and bitter divide between the siblings. From that point on, their relationship was filled with tension, arguments, and mutual accusations. Joe and Olga began their married life in the Virgin Islands, relishing their honeymoon with yacht trips, beach outings, and fine dining. Money was never an issue. Joe's business thrived, generating an annual income of approximately $1 million. Upon returning home, the newlyweds purchased a sleek Mercedes convertible worth $100,000. Unlike many, Olga refused to be a passive partner. With her sharp intellect, fluency in English, and experience in the stock market, she quickly became an asset to Joe's business. Under her guidance, their client base expanded significantly. However, just a week before the attack, an unsettling event took place. Their home was broken into. While the couple was preoccupied with work, an unknown intruder stole jewelry and family heirlooms. Strangely, Olga happened to be wearing the infamous diamond ring that day, leaving it untouched by the thief. When Joe and Olga returned home, they immediately noticed the break-in. Law enforcement arrived, but to their surprise, there was no trace of forced entry or any tangible evidence. The lack of leads led detectives to consider the possibility of an inside job, which inevitably put Kelly under scrutiny. Some believed she had orchestrated the robbery as a form of revenge for the ring deception. However, before detectives could make any breakthroughs, a far graver crime took precedence: the brutal murder of Joe and Olga. When detectives questioned Kelly, she appeared devastated. She was cooperative and forthcoming, even sharing the text messages between her and Joe. In one of Olga's messages, she had suspected Kelly of being behind the robbery. However, Kelly vehemently denied any involvement. Despite her grief, she felt immense pressure from investigators who saw her as a person of interest. Yet, the evidence did not support her guilt. Throughout numerous interrogations, Kelly never changed her statements or appeared confused. At the funeral, her sorrow was undeniable. She had loved her brother, and his loss weighed heavily on her. As detectives widened their investigation, they considered other potential motives. Joe was a highly sought-after businessman, and Olga was a stunning woman. Could jealousy have played a role? Did someone from their past hold a grudge strong enough to escalate into murder? However, those theories quickly lost traction. Joe had ended past relationships on amicable terms, and his ex-partners had long moved on, happily married. The same was true for Olga. She had completely severed ties with her Russian ex-husband. The idea that someone had traveled across the ocean for revenge seemed implausible. And so, the search for the newlyweds' enemies continued, as detectives remained determined to uncover the truth behind the brutal crime. Their focus soon shifted to Kelly's husband, Garrett. Known for his unwavering devotion to his wife, Garrett would go to great lengths to protect her. If Kelly had harbored a deep-seated grudge against her brother, could her husband have taken it upon himself to seek retribution? When questioned, Garrett remained composed and cooperative. He provided a solid alibi and firmly defended his wife's innocence. However, during the conversation, he cast doubt on Joe's financial success, implying that his brother-in-law's wealth might not have come from legitimate means. He suggested that Joe had been involved in illicit activities, possibly dealing in illegal substances. Detectives initially took Garrett's claims with skepticism, but as they dug deeper, others began to echo the same suspicions. Confidential sources alleged that Joe had been secretly selling steroids, accumulating a fortune in the process. The investigation soon led to Joe's longtime business partner and closest friend, Christopher Rivers. Unlike others who were visibly shaken by Joe's murder, Chris carried on with his daily routine, immersing himself in work. As a business co-owner, he had to manage suppliers and clients. but his apparent indifference raised eyebrows. Curious about his attitude, detectives decided to question Chris directly. He explained that he had been invited to the wedding celebration, but had missed it due to work commitments. His remarks about Joe, however, were unexpectedly sharp. He claimed that his friend had changed in recent years, becoming increasingly unscrupulous. Chris also spoke about Olga, alleging that she wasn't as innocent as she appeared. According to him, she had ties to the Russian mafia and had married Joe to expand their influence in the U.S. If true, this theory could explain the couple's extraordinary financial success. But was Chris merely spreading rumors, or was there truth behind his claims? Investigators knew they needed to verify these allegations. A deeper look into Joe's past revealed a concerning history. Years before meeting Olga, he had been arrested for illegal firearm possession and had even served time. During his incarceration, he forged new connections, some of whom had strong links to the criminal underworld. As detectives pursued this line of inquiry, a well-known drug dealer, Harry Cook, provided a startling piece of information. He revealed that Chris Rivers had frequently spoken ill of Joe, accusing him of financial dishonesty. According to Cook, Chris confided in him that he and Joe had been running an illicit business, selling unauthorized medical substances through an auto parts shop. However, Chris believed Joe was keeping a disproportionate share of the profits. Chris had mounting debts and was struggling financially while Joe continued to live a life of luxury. Allegedly, Chris had joked about wanting Joe gone, but what seemed like an offhand remark soon turned more sinister. At one point, he directly asked Cook if he would assist in getting rid of Joe. Cook, unsettled by the suggestion, refused. Suddenly, Chris was no longer just a grieving friend, he had a motive. With this new perspective, detectives intensified their questioning of Chris. However, he had a seemingly airtight alibi. Security footage from both inside and outside his home confirmed that he had been there at the time of the murder. Despite his alibi, authorities decided to dig deeper into his financials. Forensic accountants examined business records, uncovering that while the company was generating substantial revenue, it was also hemorrhaging money due to unexplained losses. Yet, to their surprise, the embezzlements had no direct ties to Joe. Police informants revealed a troubling detail. Chris had been battling a severe substance addiction for years. Recently, his dependency had spiraled out of control, leading to mounting debts, erratic behavior, and even minor thefts. Paranoia crept into his mind, causing him to confess to friends that someone was out to get him. But there was more. Investigators discovered that Chris had been involved in the illegal steroid trade, something Joe had remained completely unaware of. Joe had trusted his friend blindly, never realizing that criminal activity was unfolding right under his nose. Amid this turmoil, Joe's focus had shifted to his marriage and business, oblivious to the growing resentment festering within his so-called best friend. Detectives traced Chris's phone activity on the night of September 23rd. Though he had been at home during the crime, his phone records painted a different picture. His device had been in constant use, making and receiving calls that were later wiped from the system. However, forensic specialists managed to recover the deleted data. Most of the calls had been made to a man named Joshua, an ex-FBI informant. When questioned, Joshua admitted that he had been in contact with Chris multiple times, but his confession didn't stop there. At one point, Chris had offered Joshua a chilling deal, $65,000 in exchange for Joe's life. The payout was too tempting to ignore, but Joshua didn't want to get his hands dirty. Instead, he subcontracted the job to two hitmen, Dominic Benson and Aaron Thompson. he handed them a $5,000 advance using funds provided by Chris. The horrific truth began to emerge. Joe and Olga had not been victims of a random attack or a vengeful sibling. Their deaths had been meticulously planned by someone they had trusted. At first glance, it seemed like Chris had arranged the murders out of resentment and a desire to seize full control of the business. But the truth was even more sinister. Years before Olga entered the picture, Joe and Chris had taken out an insurance policy to safeguard their business. In the event of one partner's death, the surviving partner would receive a substantial payout, enough to settle outstanding debts, including the mortgage on their auto shop. Had Joe remained unmarried, Chris would have received the full amount. But his marriage to Olga complicated things. Legally, all insurance payouts would now go to his wife. Realizing this, Chris devised a ruthless solution: eliminate both Joe and Olga to ensure he remained the sole beneficiary. His paranoia got the best of him on the night of the crime. Phone records revealed multiple encrypted conversations between Chris and the hired killers, confirming his anxiety over the operation. Surveillance footage that initially supported his alibi now worked against him. His nervous demeanor, the constant checking of his phone, all pointed to his direct involvement. As the investigation intensified, detectives tracked down Joshua. He offered no resistance and willingly surrendered to the authorities. In an attempt to reduce his sentence, he turned on Chris, detailing every step of the plan. Further digging uncovered another disturbing revelation. Chris had not only planned the murders, he had also attempted to frame Kelly. The burglary at Joe and Olga's home had been orchestrated by Joshua on Chris's orders. The primary target? A family heirloom, the diamond ring. By making it appear as though Kelly had stolen the ring out of spite, Chris hoped to mislead investigators, shifting their focus toward Joe's sister while he collected the insurance money. But greed proved to be his downfall. His plot was too intricate, and the truth eventually unraveled. In the end, his betrayal cost him everything. In 2014, Christopher Rivers was formally charged with multiple crimes, including 2 counts of first-degree murder, 2 counts of possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony, conspiracy to commit murder, and solicitation of murder. His accomplices faced separate trials but were convicted around the same time. Aaron Thompson, the trigger man, was found guilty of both murders and received 2 life sentences plus 45 years. Dominic Benson, who backed out at the last moment, was convicted of conspiracy and aiding criminals, receiving only 5 years in prison. Joshua, the intermediary who arranged the contract killing, cooperated with authorities. As a result, he was sentenced to 5 years for conspiracy to commit murder. Chris Rivers, the mastermind behind the crime, was found guilty on all charges. He was sentenced to 2 life terms plus 50 years. Joe had built a thriving business, found love, and had a promising future ahead of him, but he never got to enjoy the life he worked so hard to create. His tragic fate was sealed by someone he trusted, a man consumed by greed, addiction, and resentment. Chris Rivers had spent years chasing wealth, but in the end, it cost him his freedom. He would live out the rest of his days behind bars, forced to face the consequences of his actions. Thanks for tuning in to Unreal True Crime. If you're intrigued by mysteries from around the world, check out our new channel, Latin Crimes, where we dive into the gripping true crime stories of Latin America. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more thrilling investigations.